Today's guest is Roberto Capodieci, okay, an Italian-born technology innovator that has profoundly impacted the world of emerging technologies, particularly in the realms of decentralized systems and blockchain technology. His journey in the IT sector began at a remarkably young age, and this is what set the stage for his career that was filled with significant achievements and contributions. Currently, he resides in the serene environment of Bali in Indonesia, and Roberti conducts most of his business activities from the bustling hub of Singapore, strategically positioning himself in the heart of technological innovation in Asia. So, Roberto, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me here. I'm doing fantastic, and you did an amazing introduction. You didn't leave much for me to say.
Well, listen, I'm sure there's a lot for you to add in that. I know it's always like the highlights, and even just in terms of highlights, I know I brought this up even off air, but I think you're the first one that's done an interview like this, or a coaching call like this from 2 a.m. because it's 2 a.m. where you are. And it's 1 p.m. where I am here in Toronto. So yes, definitely I would think if you're willing to get up to do this at 2 a.m., there's a lot more to say than just what's in your bio. So by all means, yeah, if you want to comment on anything or add to anything from your bio, floor is yours for that.
Well, not much. I'm Italian of birth because nobody is perfect. I've been spending the first 18 years there, then about 12 years mostly in the US, and now it's 20 years that I'm in Southeast Asia. We live only one time, so it's beautiful to be in nice places. So in Venice in Italy, Florida in the States, and Bali here in Indonesia. I'm a father of four. They span from 32 to 3 years old. And, I love technology since I was a little kid, and I've been a serial entrepreneur since also I was quite young.
Love it. And clearly a serial like traveler of sunny places. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
Italy, Bali, Florida. It's like, yeah, you don't venture where there's a lot of snow, it seems. So yeah, I don't
Just
blame
to
you.
just to go to ski for a week, but no more than that.
Yeah, just a little dip, and then yeah, off we go somewhere else. So, yeah. Given that I live in Canada, I understand why you would want to do that. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I think we can just kind of dive right into it. Obviously, you have this massive background in technology. You've been in it for a long time. And I know off air when you kind of submitted to be part of this coaching experience, you were talking about focus. You were talking about, okay, like there's some trust issues that I have with regards to like team members, etc. So I'd love for you just to elaborate kind of like what is it that you're facing right now, and then we can dive into what's behind that.
Yeah, I guess bad past experience have signed, like more we grow, more we're wise, but we're wise in order of the experience that we had before, I guess. And if somebody just had very good experiences, or if not, then, sometimes people try to avoid the repeating of those. I had always hard time to find the right business partners. Many times end up no very well. So much that I start thinking is probably my fault because you can have one or two bad encounter. And my fault is in finding the right person or in maintaining the relationship with the right people. So now I've really taken a sabbatical. Now is almost 2 years just to cool down, do okay things. I end up also being partner in a company while doing these things, and actually cooperating with many more. I still have mine running in the background, but I think I say sabbatic meanings knowing the ethic of everyday must work in terms of taking decision, really because I wanted to understand what is the best way to put together the future. Is really the right amount of a partner, odd number lower than two, I mean one, or the sole proprietor, and in when you have employee, how much you can trust them, how much there is a lot of things, mostly due to past bad experience, and as you say, one bad apple, rotten the whole basket, and sometimes getting very hurt by one or two or three people against the 40 or 50 we've been working with in the same time, really make you don't want to do it again, right? Like I will say many times, it's like when you're in a relationship that ends bad, thinking to start over with a new one, is kind of a weight, because I will face the same issue. What is the thing? So what is the remuneration in terms of emotion and all that I'm going through in putting myself into this again, right?
Got it. Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense if you had this bad experience again and again that you're going to want to avoid it, not just subconsciously, but even consciously. Like, who wants to go through the stress of having a partner and then having to like break that, and then the emotional impact, the financial impact, the time impact, like absolutely right. And it's one of those, like, as you grow bigger, they all become people problems, right? So I understand that 110%. So I guess what I would just ask first and foremost, just a little bit of context, because you mentioned a few different things, right? Like, how can I trust employees? I've been hurt by a few people in the past. How do I maintain the relationship? How do I find the right person? I'm starting to kind of think it's my fault, right? So there's a lot of like interplaying pieces, and I know they overlap in terms of like people, but let's just kind of break that down a little bit. So are you okay with that?
Sure thing, no problem.
Okay. So in terms of the past experiences, and again, you don't have to get into like little details, but we can just speak generally. Um, you had mentioned, okay, sometimes I think it's my fault. So if you had to guess, like what do you think might be a contributing factor on your end? Because at the end of the day, at least you control that part. So what would you say to that?
If I knew the answer, probably I wouldn't be here discussing it with you, right? So sometimes I always keep going with the analogy of love relationship when it's business partnership or like father kids with the employees, because pretty much is that the mechanics, right? At the end, when you put heart, I don't like the term human resources. That seems like, they're batteries you suck things out of. They're people that you work with, and you need to want their best, and you hope they want your best. As an employee, you are right on your side of the contract, paying salaries in time, pay their taxes and all the things, and you expect on the other side the same kind of prompt to be there, ethically focusing on your work. So you find people that actually are working online for freelance work, using your computer, using your internet connection, your electricity, your desk, your AC, and then even saving the work with names of projects that the company is doing, and actually delivering very slow on delivering, and see that the supervisor is actually friend with this person. So you see that there is a sort of conspiracy against you, which is silly because they're damaging the plate that feed them, right? Because if they are damaging the company is not doing good, and then they complain when the company gets into trouble and blame the management, maybe correctly, because people should not have never hired them. And other times there are business partners there, you know, lie just to cover themselves or to cover others. And as a CEO, you take some decision based on people that you fully trust, and this can bring bigger trouble, So, and I've been through these things a few times as well. So you wonder why is that my face doesn't seem serious enough for serious people to want to work with me, and just people that say whatever and they treat me with the whatever. Or is if you do the analogy, there are those girls that say I only find bad guys, violent guys, rather than, and then you say, okay, I don't want to make guilty the victim, but sometimes think about how you choose the guy you go out with, where you meet them. And and I wonder if this is something I should tell myself as well. How does it happen where I think the right person ends up not to be the right person? So when I face the situation of doing this again, I'm a little bit more taken back from the fear of falling into this again. So if I can break this spell and face the future in a different way, that would be amazing for it.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, the first thing is I don't want to minimize or overlook the fact that like there's going to be, crappy people on the other side. Like whatever their reason is for wasting company time, lying, doing all of the malicious things that people do. I'm not at all excusing any of that behavior. I'm not at all minimizing that. Um, when these kind of like delegation and team issues come up with my own clients, I always say, okay, well, we have to optimize for like the 100% of your 50%, meaning like the thing you directly control, like
Right.
that's your 50%. You can even like maximize your 100% of your 50%, and the other person can still be malicious and something can still go wrong, right? So I'm not at all minimizing that, but it's like if I'm working with somebody, then that's the only thing that we can really work on. It's not the other person, it's what are we doing to contribute to them enabling that behavior or whatever the case might be. So that's how I'm going to approach like these questions. It's not you're doing everything wrong, it's just the only part you do control is your 50%. So just so you know, that's how I'm going to proceed. So is that okay with you?
No, no, I'm agree. We cannot control others. We control ourselves. But in the paradigm of choices, is then if I need to do my part, then I need to monitor the other part. Is longer than if I just do all myself. But doing all by myself, I lose the quality of having two brains on something, right? So it's really a difficult place, right?
It is, because it's that limbo thing of like, okay, well, if I got to handle all these other issues, I might as well just do it myself. And yes, that is true. You can. Then the discussion goes along with like, okay, well, you can continue to do that, but there's always going to be a ceiling, because there's a ceiling on your output in terms of energy,
Absolutely.
time, motivation, all of the things, right? So that means there's a ceiling on your like earnings. And then obviously, if you're looking at what are you doing extra that somebody else could be doing, those are all now these indirect profit and time leaks. So yes, I do agree with you with that. I know that's why you're here to like eliminate these. But okay, so if we kind of have that as a base in terms of, okay, these are kind of the assumptions that we're working with. I gotta optimize for my 100%, my 50%. So when I call these like yellow flags. So when you have these employees and there's things that you notice that like, but that's interesting. Okay. What's your normal reaction? Do you address it right away? Do you like, okay, I got other things to do. I'll come back to this. No, I trust them. Like what's your normal reaction to stuff like that?
Well, if I notice, unless it's something very bad, but I try to fix it, right? I try to see, let's find the best way, why this is happening, what can be changed, and how to make it better. In terms of the initial hiring, I end up delegating 100% outside. So spending a lot of money on a headhunter just to find the correct HR person. And then from this HR person, delegating the hiring of the different roles without getting even involved. So I don't have a negative effect of who's coming in. And this already made things better, meaning that I realized that I am more romantic than pragmatic when hiring for business, which is very wrong, so it's better to have somebody with the correct professionality to do the right selection, right? So the only difficult part is number one person to start hiring the others, right? I had also that done wrong, which being a disaster because between family member and other things, which I discovered later, has been a disaster. But then, okay, and then let's say you have a good base for things. On the proceeding of a work, a project, or things. I mean, I'm talking about this thing. It cost me almost $4 million so the last experience. So it's not little money, and it's money that I could have just kept for myself and used to enjoy my life in the next future. So that private investment, personal investment, at the same time, in a very good condition, I was producing a very good income monthly. So it's a pity to live in a balance that is is made by people, because in the IT world, a computer is the minimal asset. The person sitting in front of the computer is the big asset. So it's very delicate when it comes to the human relation and how one person can affect also other employees. So I never had big company. Maximum I manage 60 people altogether, but still a number and still a place where somebody is playing dirty and the person that is honest next to them say why I am, end up with less, so it's infectious as a situation. Mostly in countries where ethics of work are not as profound like, others, sometimes like in Indonesia where I am, rather than, where the laws are not there. So if in Singapore somebody doesn't respect the rules, they're gonna face legal problems. Here, it's just, of course they lose the job, they're gonna get another one the following day. So that's the difficult balance on the low level. On the high level, I've been starting nice project startups where I wanted to partner with somebody to do the business side and more technical. And also there, being too many, those that were ready to help, mostly one person caused a lot of trouble for me. it was from the beginning, I wouldn't say scammer, but really somebody that is the police is searching for him now. And I've been told by others, and I wouldn't listen, in terms like, is the only one that is actually sitting down, helping for real, is somebody I can trust to do the work together. But, I was wrong again. Okay, and I don't want to give the impression that any business I do was disaster. I had a lot of things that went well, but particular things didn't go well and being hurting at the end of the day, And last thing that I want to say, when you are the CEO of a large group of people, everybody is nice and smile to you, but they are not very sincere, So it's also difficult to get a very good feedback from people around the situation and things. So this is one more layer of, difficulty in managing this kind of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the circumstantial aspects of like everything that's going on, and who do you have in the pool to hire, like then the cultural aspects, then yeah, the fact obviously everybody's gonna tell the boss what he wants to hear, like yeah, 110% that. And then there's also like the technical and the work. So if we could then just zoom into just say more specific scenarios. So let's just say somebody is, let's just say more lower level. So somebody's underperforming in some way, whether they don't deliver on the things that they said they're going to deliver on, they don't deliver on time, and you see that, what do you generally do?
Okay, in the past I would hire all the developers with a monthly salary, and this turned out to be a disaster because once people is guaranteed a salary, they're not motivated to work and deliver. So the last businesses I'm doing, only to the management coordination role are on a payroll. Everybody else is delivery based. So very small delivery per time, little amount of money. If they deliver properly a lot in a month, they make a lot of money, but we move more fast. If they don't, it's too bad for them. So the loss of time is much more reduced, and people that become loyal remain loyal in long term. So in this term, I found a solution. Even though it's not the solution that I wish I had, there is a beautiful book about remote workers, which are even more difficult things, written by the people that made Basecamp, other tools for
Yeah, the
developers.
37 signals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And this book says, if you hire people and you need to monitor them working, you are not managing, you're a kindergarten teacher pretty much, because if you hire the right people, they have ethics, that they're happy on their side of the contract, you don't need to monitor them. You know that they're doing the best for the company, right? So which is the trigger that to keep a person in this place is equities, is a very big pay. So big pay doesn't make a difference. I tried that. And if somebody is ethical, somebody is not, doesn't matter the money that they get. Actually, they're very good at acting and telling you the story, justifying whatever happened to them. Here in Indonesia in particular, in many developing countries, lies are part of the cultural aspect. I had an employee whose mother died 5 times in a year, for example, like just telling me why you didn't come to work. I don't need, but on the other side, system like this are fixing an issue that is maybe too complex, too individual, person by person. So that's how I took action to solve this kind of problem, which is different from when you want to do a very small project and you're working one-to-one with somebody else, right? In which, okay, you can say, I'm going to pay you such, but you need to find somebody that is really focused on what you want to do and not just. But when you have an office where there are many seats, many people sitting there and working, there are so many aspects that are complex to manage.
Yeah, and again, I'm not downplaying the fact that there's a lot of different moving pieces here. And yes, I think the ideal scenario is exactly like the book describes, right? Like you don't want to babysit people. You let them to work, you give them the autonomy, and it's the merit and it's the output that actually matters, right? 110%. That's all like where we want to strive towards. So the original question was really like about the specific scenario, right? And where your brain went to was like, okay, well, these are all the things I did to kind of mitigate and change the environment so that I don't get into this situation where if somebody doesn't do a good thing, then what do I do? Okay, well, I switch from set of salary to project based. That helped because it kind of weeded out the people that didn't want to do. Get it? That makes sense. And it doesn't really answer the kind of your 50% of the question, right? And our brains will sometimes do this, and that's okay. So let's just say even when you had employees, right? So somebody said, okay, I'm going to deliver X, and then they delivered Y, or they delivered X late, or whatever underperforming thing happened. What's your actual response? How do you respond to it?
Okay, bringing a much more recent example, they ended up yesterday actually on a developer hired, not directly my choice, but as a community. We're 5 business partners, this company. And first month, we don't understand, probably need to understand the project. Second month, the delivery is not these big things. And then the excuses, it seems like DevStocks Day, every day, the excuses, every day, things servers goes down, and et cetera, et cetera. And the approach is complex because you send this person away and you need to start from zero, because it's very difficult to replace a developer halfway in implementation. So it's like, how do you call it? The when people sit at the casino, they start putting coin and then they keep putting money in because they want to recover what they already know that they lost, right? And this mechanism triggers in as well with somebody working an important piece of your project. So you want to say, okay, let's try to fix it. But we arrived 5 months over that is impossible, and we lost 5 months in the implementation of a big part of the project, with the person telling us, so this is above my capacity, I cannot do it, I put a lot of time, and at the same time, I gave direction, I gave an indication. And when I say, well, you don't listen to what I told you because it did completely different, so not what I did is perfect. So if it was perfect, it would work. So you have and then you make you understand that also all the other attempt to help this person perform better were no use, but is something that drags a long time. It's a loss of money because all the money paid is a loss of time, is needed to restart with things. So how can this be done better? Probably being more pragmatic in eliminating the person much earlier than dragging the project for the problem, sorry, for so long. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea what in my 50% I could do
Perfect. Okay, so
better.
let's explore
It's
that one a little bit further because it's actually
right.
concrete. So let's just, okay, if I'm taking the whole thing and I'm saying, okay, so that this is 5 months in between the time that this person started on this thing, and then 5 months, and if I'm understanding you correctly, he's like, okay, well, this thing that you want done can't be done, but what I did was perfect. Like that's kind of the attitude that they had after
Yeah,
5 months. Is that
correct.
accurate? Okay, perfect. So you said, okay, on month 1, I was like, okay, well, it's a complex project, so I gotta give it some time for the solution to
Correct.
kind of appear, right? And then second month, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was just like, okay, well, now we're kind of doing it, so let's keep doing it. Okay. So what happens between, let's just assume that's all perfect. So what happens then between month 2 and month 5? Like is there any indicators on there that like, okay, we're not, like, I'm not seeing output, I'm not seeing anything tangible, any of that come up?
Right. In Mantu was more on technology choices. So I suggested not to use certain technology, to use a particular architecture, because by experience, I know that's what it works and what it not. You can make something that works anyway until it's not stress test. But then when you do it and there is a certain mass of beta tester using it, is gonna go down, right? So under this aspect, things start moving, and they seems to move okay for month 2 and 3, maybe. And then when problems start hitting
Okay, so just if you
the
rewind
system,
there, so what's the
and
criteria
again,
for things are moving okay?
the criteria was that it was also difficult for me to explain to the other business partner that the architecture of a complex system requires more work on the back end before it can show the effect of it in the front end. So I've been actually bypassed, if you want. It wasn't really my interest to insist for them, they have no technical expertise to direct
Okay,
the
so even if you're just,
developers
and I'm
to,
going to interrupt you now, not because I'm
right.
trying to like cut you off, but like
Yeah,
there's just like little like kind of yellow flags that pop up, and I always want to
sure.
kind of follow those threads. That's the only reason why I'm interrupting you, right? So you had mentioned, okay, I didn't want to insist. Okay, and then you
Yeah,
followed
because
that up with, well, they weren't actually like they're not technically as knowledgeable as me. So
right.
why do you not want to insist?
But in this case, because this is a startup that I just been mentoring. Okay, I got involved in helping, but it's not my original idea. It's not my original project. It's something that these people started and put together.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a consultant, quite well paid actually, consultant for large architecture, systems. And you have two kinds of clients. The one they hire you and they say, okay, I trust you have the experience. Tell me what we need to do, what we're doing wrong. Another, they hire you because they want you to tell them what they want to hear, and not what you want to tell them, right? And those are dangerous because then they're gonna blame you, if things are not in the proper way. When you say, "Look, I am a consultant. If you want, I tell you how to do things." In this case, and in many other cases, it's hard unless people live the experience themselves to understand that there are reasons for certain choices that can be understood only down the road and not the beginning. So this being a startup, even though I got involved, is for the glory of the future, meaning that even though the startup is making a lot of money, 100% of this money are reinvested into creating the platform. So there is no end of the month pay that comes back home, okay? Is a satisfaction, nonetheless, is a huge learning things for me, but I had no reason to eat up my stomach in fighting with people to make a point for what. So if people need to learn a lesson by living it, so it be. And in this case, as being like this now, lesson has been learned very well since a couple of months ago, if not. And that's another way to prove your point with other people. There is no other way. If it was my own project, my own things, my own company, probably I would be acted completely different. So that's the reason of the yellow flag, which obviously it will makes not much sense, but at the same time, uh, you know, I guess I did my best in making my point, and then if people want to listen to it or not, well, what can I do about it?
Got it. So kind of the stakes weren't there for you to actually push to have like to insist. Like the payoff wasn't there. It's not your company. Like I'm here
It's
to be paid for my
partially
advice.
mine,
If you're
but
not going to take it, that
on the
that's on
scale
you.
of I did actually something very drastic. So I said, remove my face from the website. I don't want to be connected to this because in 2 months it's gonna fail, and I don't want to be the CTO that didn't manage to get the project in the right way. Okay, so if you want to go in this way, welcome, go in this way. But if you want to get my shares back, I give back whatever. I want to be out of this because we're not going to the direction. And at the end, I've been not taking seriously also there. Then, some of this one person in particular is an amazing, amazing person. Yeah, that one that I would love to have as business partner. Well, and in respect to this guy, that really is putting 120% into the project. Okay, I stayed. And eventually, by the time things were already unfolding with the trouble, now they make sure to listen to me very well before taking any other decision. Probably was a needed path, a needed experience to get there. But obviously, if I could have been able enough to avoid it, that would have been good on me, I guess.
Got it. Okay. So what I'm hearing, at least from this particular example, was okay. So I did insist. The stakes weren't there that it mattered for me to keep pushing because I was a consultant. It's not my business, etc. And then when they didn't want to listen, then I just kind of pulled away. Kind of you drew your own boundaries, and like you were okay with that. Okay. I actually think that that absolutely makes sense given that context. So I guess the part that I'm prodding here, so like I'll kind of I guess showcase to you kind of the few things that like I'm seeing, right? And this is actually very typical of people that are very good at, like they're very intellectually smart, they know how to solve problems, they've made a living out of solving their problems, their brain is always going towards, okay, what are the external pieces around me that like I can manipulate and solve things. And that's what makes you brilliant at the work that you do. Okay. The distortion of that, or like the kind of flip side of that gift, the flip side of that strength, is sometimes we look for problems to solve externally instead of, okay, well, looking at, well, how am I contributing to this? And I know it relates to the whole 50% that we talked about earlier. What I want to point to is just where your brain kind of defaults to every time I ask you a question, right? Like I ask you, like, how did you handle this particular thing? And your brain will default, well, this was the problem, this was the circumstance around the problem, these were like the context of it, and this is how we solved it, right? Which is great. And the part that's usually missing, and it's very common, like I said, with people that are really good kind of from the neck up in terms of using that tool to solve problems, is, okay, like, what was internally happening within me when I said yes to this?
Okay.
Did I say no when I meant yes? Did I say yes when I meant no? How often is that happening? What's the time between when I see an issue and then when I draw it? Like, that's usually sometimes where kind of the solution to these long-term patterns can occur for individuals like yourself. So I'm just curious, like, what lands for you from that? What doesn't?
I mean, the internal struggle in front of a situation like this, if I want to think, I don't know. I mean, probably you're pointing to something that is hard for me to understand because it's hard for me to explore, or is probably something I never, look at it. So and my brother is a psychiatrist, okay? Another sister studied psychology. So there is a little bit in the blood of the family, also the analysis behind the just natural behavior. But if I have to think, a few times I had this thought, like, is it difficult to talk to me? I have a voice tone rather than and behavior that I don't think I have, but maybe have, that seems upsetting, angry, scary to the people, which stop me from having a certain kind of conversation, or I'm reacting on the basis of something else that happened in the past. I don't know, even like a child, I don't know. And then if you don't want to listen to me, then peace off. Like, why should I even try to make this communication work? Because go wonder why I should be reacting like this, or because I've been writing books, I've been doing communication, I speak as a keynotes, I do podcast. So I try to bring my communication level to a level that is easy to understand, easy to comprehend. Probably I don't listen enough of what other people have to say. I don't know. I'm really in the dark in this moment. If I need to say, I don't know what else, what could I have done differently to make it to make a better outcome, like in trying to explain my points better, in trying to understand other people's point better, and try to work on those as a mean to reply. No idea. Honestly, zero idea.
That's okay. And listen, I appreciate your honesty in this, because it's something that, especially in tech, where it's like such a like mind dominated thing, for people when they like step into a space like this, where like somebody's asking you about skill sets that you might not have built, in terms of like tuning into, okay, well, what's actually happening, you said, like behind the surface, is this something from like the past, etc. It's a totally different skill set than how you go about, like, it's what makes you successful in your day to day. It's kind of the opposite of what you need in instances like this. So I just want to acknowledge and commend you for like stepping into the deep end to explore that, because you're right, it is difficult, because it's like, I've been riding a bicycle and now somebody's saying, ride a unicycle. Like, it's like two completely different things. Doesn't matter that they both have wheels, right? That's number one. Number two, from my experience of you today, obviously I don't know you outside of this like conversation, but like I wouldn't say that communication is something that I find lacking for you, at least not in terms of like the bits you mentioned in like tonality, or am I intimidating or any of that. I don't find that at all, to me personally, right? Where I think you might want to look at for things like this, or where the problem lies, like you mentioned, okay, well, I'm not really sure if I listen to people appropriately, or I'm not sure if I'm communicating the essence of what it is that I want to say. That 110%, there's a lot of stuff that we can play around with there. So there's kind of two things that I'm looking just through my notes right now. Like you mentioned, I might be like too romantic for business, and then this whole listening thing. So if I'm looking at those things, like what do you mean? Like what's your definition of like I'm too romantic for business or management or whatever it is that you said?
That if I need to hire somebody and I know that they are more in need of the job, rather than the other that is from a wealthy family, but maybe it's even better coding. I end up probably offering the job to the person that needed more,
Okay,
which is stupid, but which make me go sleep okay at the night, in a way. So
perfect.
that's
Okay,
why I
so
don't want to be
firstly,
part of the process.
yeah, so I'm going to cut you off right there again. I know, because I think this is a relevant thing, right? So if you just look at what you said, and I know I'm painting one brush across everything, but it just potential pattern, and you tell me where it does or does not resonate. But it's like, okay, if I'm hiring people based off what they need so that I can sleep at,
No, it's
you know,
Browns.
yeah, it's a beautiful quality. Like it's a quality, like I like humanity and I want them to like to do good, right? Like that's a beautiful thing. And the ironic thing about stuff like that is like the A players that you want, like the ones that I don't have to babysit, I can just get them on the outcome.
Yeah, so they
They're
don't
generally
feel.
not the ones that need work, right? Like
No,
that's
but I
the
mean,
irony of that.
probably I didn't want to have done the wrong example, meaning that that's not really always the key, selection on factors that you need or not. Obviously, that's one factor, but I also look at the human aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I see empathy in this person. I see really interested on what we're doing. More human is a person, more I think is good to work with, more they qualify on top of the actual skills. For that there is ChatGPT now probably. Before you take the robot that work for you, which is a good choice, maybe for a bank, but in aspect of creativity, fantasy, so you need somebody that can put their person at play. And so the fact that somebody will need a job more than another, it's one of the aspects that to see more the human aspect. Maybe also the other need that they don't open up on this aspect. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
those that open up more, that shows their human aspect more, are more keen to win my heart rather than my rational, decision making.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
that's why I moved. And this may be applied also with a person having excuses, somebody that is like like is trying to build up excuses, but he has a certain way of convincing, because many manipulators are very good at that, and they make their life just to this ability. They manage to convince me in a certain way, to say, okay, let's give another chance when I should have already closed the things. In this aspect, there's a romantic, right? Yeah.
Perfect. No, I love that. So that's a perfect example. So what would it mean in general, or what would it mean about you if you knew somebody was a good, like you discerned they were a good human and they needed a job? What does it mean about you if you didn't hire them?
I don't know, they're gonna find the job somewhere else. I try to recommend them. I'm gonna check on them a few weeks later to see if they're okay.
Okay, so what
um,
does it mean specifically about you if you don't hire them, even though they have these?
the I found myself in the situation probably I was on the other side of it in the past. I mean, I had not the best relationship with my family when I was 20 years old. I was,
Okay, so
broke, and
I'm gonna pause you, right? Because this is a like a your brain's very good at this, like coming up with really good things to deflect a direct question, right?
okay,
So the question
okay,
is,
thank you.
what does it mean about you specifically? So Roberto, like what does it mean about
Hmm.
Roberto if you don't hire somebody who's in need?
Nothing. Not much. I don't think I would judge myself like uh, it's not my responsibility at the end of the day, right? So I could have done a good thing. If I didn't do it, it's too bad. I cannot save the planet. So on this side, I'm very fast. I don't even need to forgive myself in terms that I'm very fast okay with the situation. If I can make a difference for somebody, then it's fantastic, you know.
Okay.
That's it.
And it seems like historically, though, like makes sense. Yeah, it's not your responsibility. You're not here to save the world. Yeah, I get it. But it seems like historically, though, this has been a driving force in some of the hires that you've had.
I noticed that in my past, when I had with me people from this situation, they end up to be the most loyal, the most long-serving people. You know, even people that I meet 20 years later, they still remember, recognize, and help me if I need. You know, that's natural. I guess it's an obvious
Sure.
consequence. So while other people they just gone disappear completely from my life, even though I shared, you know, like nights awake coding and other things, you know, but
Yeah. But even in, because you also said, okay, this applies to like people with excuses, right? Like they're tugging at my heartstrings, and they usually are very good at manipulating that. Okay.
I'm very bad and letting people manipulate me, one of the two. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the part that I'm getting at. Because
Mm.
globally, when I have somebody with this sort of dynamic, like this kind of falls under the umbrella of like people pleasing, right?
Mm.
So again, globally speaking, this is like there's a part of me that prioritizes being liked over being, let's just say, assertive or being
Yeah,
effective, right? Okay.
120%.
Okay.
Yes, I recognize myself into this. Not because I need the appreciation of other, because I need to feel it on myself. You know, I feel that was okay. You know, so
Yeah, it's not the validation that you're seeking, but it's internally like
yeah,
the
yeah, correct.
dynamic of the relationship. A part of me prioritizes being liked over assertive, effective, firm, whatever the situation calls
Absolutely.
for.
Yes.
So this is one of those big gaps whenever these interpersonal delegation type things come up. A big root cause is always going to fall into this umbrella of people pleasing, right? And I think this is actually the first time we were able to get to a root cause for you that's driving these problems. I know there's more, and
Yeah,
it's what you mentioned before that I was reflecting back to you. The reason this feels like such a blind spot for you is it's such a natural expression of you to, like you said, want to help the humanity aspect of this, want to be liked, that it colors a lot of decisions that you might make differently if you were only using your rational brain, right?
absolutely true.
So because so much of your mind space is occupied naturally on solving problems, and you're really good at that and you get paid at that, oftentimes what gets neglected is actually looking at, okay, well, what's driving some of these more personal decisions, like a different part of my brain that I have to use to access all of that. And even if you see how like I had to ask you the same question
Mm.
multiple times, that's for that reason. Like I'm just not as practiced as like putting that kind of analysis back onto myself and seeing, okay, well, what's the gap between me? So one of them definitely is this people pleasing bit. So anyway, before I go on, like what lands for you from that, or what doesn't?
No, no, I do recognize this 100%. I think that's absolutely correct. It is important. For example, I despise Jeff Bezos and I admire Elon Musk on the other side, you know, like as maybe in private life they're completely the opposite, but the image that they have, the persona that they have, that's exactly, you know, interesting. I've been interviewed by Amazon and I told them in their face I despise their company, their method of sales, you know, and so on, because it's true. And probably I cut myself my legs for potential work in the future. But you know, it is more important that I'm sincere. Sometimes people say I am honest. I say always the truth, and you know, then people get offended when they tell them you're ugly or whatever. You know, like at the end of the day, you know, that this is a joke, clearly.
No, no,
But
I get it. Yeah.
it is a balance between crude action, you know, on knowing what you're doing and I've been working with law enforcement. I did other things where you need to create an identity, you need to lie professionally for work, but on the human life, on myself as a person, I would never allow that, you know. So in the moment that I want to look inside myself to say, okay, I am okay with myself, And I do this in many aspects, the work and relationship. Any ex-wife, and I had several, and ex-girlfriend, hardly, I mean, I may be wrong, but within myself, I think I did all I could. I will have no regret. There is not the day that I say, I should have done better, I should have done more, because for what is my knowledge of what I could do, for sure I did my best. Maybe today I discovered that I should have done something else, and I start looking back and, but this goes for work relationship, business partnership, behavior with employees, etc., etc. I always did above my best. As I was saying, in the last company, I put out of my pocket a few $1 million to save the situation when the situation was created by lies of the person who was next to me that was coming to eat at my house with his wife and all, people I trust, and that comes out to be absolute disaster behind what was the curtain of lies that and I covered this thing with my own private money, risking not to send my kids to the right school where we're going because then I cannot afford it anymore. So this is the kind of person, unfortunately, I am, and consequently, I have a time to, given because people tends to think the other people are like yourself. That's the image we try to project on others is us, right? And then the thief is always the suspicious people sitting on his house, right? Rather than the charitable person who thinks that everybody else is going to behave in this way. And probably this is the problem that I have in terms of acting in a certain way, right? No idea. And again, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be here, right?
No, absolutely. So yeah, and I agree with you that whole sentiment of like both the innocent and the criminal, like they both act the same. It's like how do I discern what the difference is? Like that is obviously the question. And I'm sorry to hear like that it's like the beauty of people with like the people pleasing umbrella of patterns. They're generally actually like really good people that want the best for humanity. And that is the gift. And that's what you were mentioning before around, there's people that I helped, and then 20 years later, like we still talk, that they still send me updates. That's like a beautiful thing, right? And if you take that quality and you leave it unchecked, meaning like you don't set kind of the adult boundaries around it, because and we'll go a bit deeper into this, but like the origins of this pattern very much lie in our childhood, right? Like it's kind of how we optimize in order to get along, get by, survive, like whatever your history actually is, right? There are good qualities in there, but the innocence aspect of it, if left unchecked, always gets manipulated in adulthood. Why? Because like victims and bullies are actually like the perfect match for each other, right?
Yeah,
It's one of
right.
those things like people don't think about like, okay, we got to stop the bullying, etc. Yes, that's true, but you don't do that by telling the bully don't do it, because
So,
there's so
but
much
yeah,
advantages
thank
to it. You actually just make the
correct.
victim stronger, right? Then there's the bully can't go anywhere. So I know it's a bit of a tangent, but the point I'm trying to make is like when you have these qualities where a part of you is optimizing for being liked, where a part of you is looking at the human, where a part of you is willing to maybe sacrifice more than the situation calls for, or that paints red flags green. Like, okay, that wasn't that big of a deal,
Mm.
but then looking back on it, it was actually a big deal, right? That's when you have generally this like childlike part that's operating subconsciously. Like if this was, like you said, conscious, I would have solved it, wouldn't be here. I agree with you on that. But generally, these parts of us operate subconsciously, that they have like the consciousness almost of a child, but put into very adult situations with very adult
It's
consequences.
Eric
That's
Bernard that writes on "I Am Okay, You're Okay," the book on the parents, the child, and the adults that we grow inside, right? And
yes,
yeah, that's
yes.
very possible that this is actually one
Yeah.
aspect that then I need to explore more, I guess.
Yes, 110%. I think you were like the goal you are searching for is going to have those pieces involved 110%. I'm not saying it's all of it. You're going to need to then implement that into, systems and processes and all of the things you already know how to do. So I'm not discounting that this is one magical solution, but all of those things stand on the foundation of this kind of leadership aspect, right? If leadership wise, I can't discern, if I can't make rational choices, if I'm impacted by, previous woundings or patterns that don't longer serve me, that's always going to be the blind spot or the hole that I can fall into, even if I have the perfect system. So yes.
In front of the acknowledgement of this, yes, because without that, I always doing the best decision, right? Which is
Correct.
wrong, but is the correct one based on my inputs. Because in fact, at the end of the day, probably you want to put on a scale, okay, which is the real goal I want to have? Be the person I believe is good for me to be, or be the cold money-making business manager that doesn't care and is very productive. It's the Steve Jobs of the situation, for example, right? And this should be also a choice to mediate, right? Probably I'm too much on a side and too little on the other, but also being too much on the other side probably is effective if the goal is this one, but is ineffective in the moment that you are a human being between many other human beings, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, and this is exactly what I work on with clients. It's always find your balance, right? So it's not about negating who you are and
Mm.
downplaying your gifts, right? It's about taking those gifts and ensuring that they show up in a way that doesn't create the consequences that you don't want and helps you get the results you do want, right? So basically, putting it in simpler terms, like you eliminate those leaks of profit and time that I lose with these interpersonal things, right? But that doesn't mean I don't still get to operate, at the intersection of human and technology. Like that's a beautiful, beautiful thing,
No,
right?
absolutely.
So it's finding that balance by eliminating the parts that no longer are needed in the way that they've been operating, right? Like as a macro picture, that's
Yeah.
essentially what's in front of you.
As my brain works very fast, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. As we're talking about this, I'm thinking all the situation in the past 6 months where I had, situation worth analyzing. As did I behave in front of the disappointment I had with other people was because I didn't manage to please them, or I didn't manage to affect them in the right way. Or what is in fact because I've been told at a certain point that I'm difficult to talk to because I get angry very fast, which is something that left me a little bit perplexed. I start asking all my best friend, family member, do you see this in me? I mean, people that I hope was giving me an honest reply, because it's difficult to tell somebody, yes, you're crap, and nobody confirmed this thing. So I was wondering, probably I'm projecting something, and this person is projecting on me something else. If that's what they are telling me. At the same time, yesterday a friend told me, "Do I sound too aggressive?" People tell me I'm aggressive in my speech. I said, "No, you're perfectly fine. Don't worry." Which is, also a point of I don't know, is a good point to investigate for me. And then thank you for the patience for asking me the same question 20 times, because I really couldn't make sense of what you actually were asking, and probably I still don't make a lot of sense to what you were asking. But it's not something doesn't happen over
Listen,
time, overnight.
absolutely. And listen, if you were to listen to like a lot of episodes of this, you would hear me doing the same thing. Like it's a very common
Uh,
thing. It's actually a very common psychological defense because we get by so often with that working to solve the short-term problem. What makes me good at my job and what makes me effective is like I'm very good at finding, okay, hold on, where is the inconsistency here? Right. And whenever the brain deflects, that's something like there's something
that
to
is
look
the
there,
sign.
right? That there's some, I don't know what it is, but there's something there, right? In your instance right now, it was unpacking really the people pleasing. And I understand with your guys, okay, this opens up more questions. I do agree with you because that's probably opening up a whole lot of, and even the anger thing, there's a lot of things with anger, like it oftentimes protects hurt. So like, is that coming out? If you're dealing with manipulative people, they might view your assertiveness as anger, and then knowing that you'll pull back if they, so there's a lot of different dynamics that can happen there that I know we don't have time to get into.
It's almost
um
scary to think to go into this. Is opening a box that maybe you don't want to open in a certain way, or you want to open, but yeah, need to be well prepared.
yeah, it's one of those things that it's kind of like it might hurt in the short term to dive in
Right.
and like heal that, but
And
the
then
outcomes afterwards, like even if you just look at the simple example with, you shared like the 4 million, like, am I saying people pleasing would have not cost you 4 million? No, I don't know that for sure, but could it have buffered that? Could it have made you have different choices? Could it have solved it prior? Like maybe, right? We don't know, but it was an issue, so we want to solve it. You know what I mean? Like that's just what this comes down to. So yeah, any questions, comments, or concerns about that?
perfect sense. That's
Perfect sense. Okay.
a, a very good trip into
Fair enough.
some.
So yeah, I mean, listen, thank you very much for coming on and being so vulnerable. I know this is not an easy thing to do generally, and it's definitely not easy, like I was saying before, if you're not used to kind of diving into this type of work. I think you did fabulously. So thank you for that. Yeah, and then if you want to just close us off, let everybody know, where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is yours for that.
Sure, probably I can share with you a link to my LinkedIn profile, and you can share that.
Yeah,
But
we'll
my name
include
is
that in the
easy.
show notes for sure. Yes.
Roberto Capodieci. If you can spell that, just Google it, or rcx.it. There's a shortcut to my website.
Awesome. Well, we'll include that in the show notes. But Roberto, thank you very much for being on. And for everybody that's listening, we'll see you on the next one.